Hello, I'm Stacy from trulymajestic.com, and thank you so much for being here at my live webinar. I'm here to teach you how to create killer luxury knits, giant knits with arm knitting, for a fraction of the price that you would buy them for. And for those of you who already arm knit, this will transform your arm knits. Or if you're just beginning out, these tips and advice and things that I'm going to teach you will have you miles ahead of beginners that are just starting to learn, of other beginners. My husband and I have been pioneering the best practices of arm knitting with wool roving specifically. This is kind of a new phenomenon, and it's been only around for a few years. So we've done a lot of research and testing out what works and what absolutely doesn't work. The things that we're going to share with you, we haven't really heard anyone else talking about them. So, who is this webinar for? This is for people that love arm knitting, or if you're clueless about arm knitting but you want to learn, this is for you. If you want to create your own arm knitting designs but you don't know where to start, this is for you. Or if you have an Etsy shop and are already selling giant knits, sorry, I'm tripping over my tongue, and you just want more ideas, tutorials, and other things to just kind of keep a step ahead of your competitors, you're in the right place. And even if you use giant needles and not your arms to knit, you're in the right place, because we are going to go through a lot of tips that have to do with knitting with this giant merino wool roving. Now that you know you're in the right place, and you all want to be here, let's see how many countries from around the world have been brought together for the love of these huge, beautiful blankets. Let me know in the comments what country you're from. That would be lovely for us all to see. So what are you going to learn in this webinar? You're going to learn how to minimize these huge wool roving blankets from shedding and still keep them intact so they have maximum fluffiness. 2, you're going to learn how to machine wash these, because the majority of information out there is saying they absolutely cannot be machine washed, you will destroy them, and that's not the case if you've knitted them up properly. So you'll learn how to machine wash them, how to instantly know if the wool that you've chosen is suitable for arm knitting. There are hundreds of types of wool. Merino wool is not the only one you can knit with. I've knitted with bamboo wool blends and silk wool blends, and actually several different types of wool, and many of them work and some of them don't work. So you'll learn how to tell instantly what does work. One trick you must know to arm knit with thin yarn, because I know a lot of you also used regular yarn to destash your huge cupboards, and I have a trick for you to keep your knits looking nice. How to keep your stitches nice and tight and even throughout the entire blanket, and also where to buy your wool roving for cheap directly from the woolen mill. If you're coming from the UK, you might already know this one, but if not, you'll be finding this out in this webinar. Be sure to have a pencil and paper handy to take notes. I'll be going quite fast through all this information, and I don't do fluff. I also have about 3 hours of information to cover, but I don't want to keep you that long, so we're going to try to keep it down to 1 hour. If you have any questions along the way, although I can't actually answer them on screen, I will be live in the comments later and answer your questions. But if you're watching this and you don't have Facebook to comment with, you can also email me your questions and I will definitely get back to you. So before I delve in, I also want to say that the points I mentioned are actually things that you will learn in this webinar. If there's anything that's more frustrating to me, it's webinars that promise tons of stuff and by the end of it they just want to sell you something and say, you'll get all of this if you buy. That's not happening here. You're actually going to learn all of this stuff in this webinar, and I hope you take home this information and are able to use it and really create something wonderful. I do also have an offer to give you, but I'm not going to share it with you unless you really love the information that I'm giving you for free, because really, what's the point of giving you an offer when you're not even happy with what you've learned so far? Right, without wasting another moment, let's delve in. So the first problem we have is when you knit up this beautiful wool roving, it was actually not meant to be knitted. It was meant to be felted. Wet felters and needle felters use this, and because of that, it's unspun wool and it sheds and falls apart, and it can really make a disastrous mess even after you've knitted it into the blanket. In fact, you'll find on the internet the major problem with these blankets is that they shed everywhere when they're knitted wrong. So I'm going to show you how to stop the shedding, or at least how to minimize the shedding. To do that, we need to lightly felt our wool roving first before we knit it, and I have a video clip how. The first thing you want to do is take your wool roving out of the bag. You find these bits that have come off and you smooth them back on to the main bulk of the wool roving, and then stretch the whole thing through your arms. Go through the entire bit, find the pieces, stick them back on, and then you need to next roll it into a center pull ball. Wool felts by friction, so all of this is kind of with your hand around it, giving it a bit of friction to start felting it. Pull it out, knit it into something very, very gently. And this is a really rough bit coming off. I've actually just kind of smushed it back on and twizzled it, and now I'm going to knit over it. The wool sticks together pretty well. If you have big problem areas, it sticks back on. Then you knit it, unravel it, pull it, put it into a center pull ball, knit it, unravel it, put it into a center pull ball, and all of this gives the wool a little bit of gentle friction, and it starts to felt. When your wool is felted, it'll look like this, stiff. This is too loose here, and the end is a bit stiff, so you know when it's felted, and it shouldn't shed. Or I should say, the shedding should be absolutely minimal here because the fibers are all bound together. Now it's not as fluffy as you can see, it's got about half the density, so we have another problem now. We have flat yarn and we want to make a big beautiful blanket. So what do we do to solve this problem? We'll come to that answer in just a second. But first I want to say, now that you've felted your yarn up really well, not just slightly but quite well, you can actually machine wash it on a quick wash, like a 15-minute quick wash, and it will machine wash without getting destroyed. If you go longer than a 15-minute quick wash, your fibers will bind together too much, and then you'll never ever be able to get your blanket to the maximum fluff. You can still wash it longer if you like the thinner yarn, that's not a problem. But if you want it big and puffy, 15 minutes is a perfect amount of time. Now you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, I've just destroyed my beautiful knit. But here is where the fluffing comes in. You have to fluff your blankets by pulling them apart. It's painfully slow. You have to do each stitch. As you can see, I'm just gently pulling the fibers out one direction and then turning my hands, pulling it out the other direction. So it has a nice hollow inside and the outside is still fully felted. And the beauty about doing this, here's the magic, when you throw it in the washing machine next time, for some reason, it tends to hold its beautiful fluffy shape. I think it's because the outside has already been felted. So if you do another quick wash after this one is dried, it will keep its beautiful, puffy, billowy self together. I'll just let you watch a little bit more fluffing, and then I'm going to show you a before and after picture. If you have any questions, please pop them down in the comments or email me, and I'll definitely get back to you. You can see the huge difference now. The one side that's been fluffed is big and fluffy, and the side that hasn't been fluffed looks scary. Ideally, you should dry your knits flat, but so you can see I've hung mine up. That's wet, unfluffed, and this is still wet and fluffed. You can see the massive difference, and fluffing it actually makes it dry much quicker. So how do you choose the best wool roving for your project? There are hundreds of varieties of wool. Some of them work great, they felt up fast, and some of them do not work great. In fact, some fibers are extremely coarse and extremely itchy, and others are super soft. So I'm going to introduce you a way to figure out how to pick the best wool roving for your project. Wool is actually measured in microns. I know this sounds technical and scary, but it's very simple. The higher the micron, the coarser the wool. The lower the microns, the softer the wool. So a micron is actually measuring the diameter of one strand of fiber. So if it's very thin, it's very soft. If it's very thick, it's very coarse. And that's how you measure the softness. You can also find out just by touching the wool if it's coarse or soft. This picture is quite coarse. It looks a bit like a scouring pad, and it would be rough wool to actually arm knit with. However, you can, but it'll just be itchy. This is merino wool, and it's very soft. You can have it right on your skin, and there's absolutely no itch at all. So as far as coarseness or softness, it depends on what you want to do with it, what's best for you. If you're going to be walking around in a sleeveless tops and your shorts and you want to bundle up in a blanket, you want merino wool. But if it's just going to be on your bed and you know you're not going to be bundling up in it, the coarser wool is perfect. And usually the coarser wool is cheaper, generally, and also the undyed wool is cheaper. I know that's kind of obvious. For arm knitting, you want something that will felt up, and actually to do that you can just take a tuft of wool roving in your hands and squidge it up and roll it around. Your hands should be just slightly damp. Just get them a little bit damp if they're not, and roll this up. If it starts to get stiff and sticking together, that's good. It felts. But if it just doesn't felt, if it doesn't stick together, see, this is sticking a little bit. Just barely. But if it doesn't stick together, then it doesn't felt up, and we have to have felting for a good blanket that can be washed. It's a must. You must have it be able to felt. So you can see here it's actually started to felt together. So that's how you can tell if this is going to be good for arm knitting or not. It needs to stick. So alpaca wool is actually quite difficult to get to stick together. However, if you have it mixed with merino wool or another wool, it does stick. And also I found out silk blends, you can have a 20% silk blend to an 80% merino wool. That works well. And also bamboo, 20% or even 30% to 70% merino wool will work. However, you definitely want to stay away from yak wool. Yak wool is just so soft, you just can't even believe how soft and how warm it is. It's like magic. But as far as arm knitting it, it's an absolute nightmare. So if you are trying to do new and different things, I would stay away from yak wool roving. Before we jump to the next section, I'll just say that merino wool, Corriedale wool, and Shetland wool are my three favorite wools to use. These all felt up well. They have a lot of nice bounce. Actually, Corriedale and Shetland are more coarse, just slightly, but they have more bounce than merino wool. That's why I like to use those. For those of you who use regular yarn and you want to do this right, I found regular yarn bunches up a lot, especially if you're pulling out of 3 or 4 or even 6 or 10 different balls all at once. So this is a trick to help you actually get it nice and even and do your knits. So you're going to be chaining the entire ball of yarn. You're going to prepare all the yarn that you want to knit with by chaining it in huge chains. And for those of you who have no idea what crocheting is or chaining is, you can watch this little video clip. You just need to make a knot and then simply pull your yarn, this is called working yarn, the one that hasn't been knitted up yet, through the loop. Really, 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 really long. This is a huge chain. And then grab it again, grab the working yarn again through the loop, pull it out really, 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 really long, and you're going to be doing this with the entire ball of yarn. And if you come to the end and need to tie on a new piece of a new ball, you just tie it on with a regular knot and then do this. And as you can see, my yarn is nice and even. It has 3 strands the entire way through, and it actually doesn't get all bunched up and squidged up when I'm knitting with it. This is the entire ball of yarn rolled up, and it just stays so nicely together doing it this way. So that's the way you should arm knit if you have regular, just regular yarn. I get asked this last one a lot, how to keep your arm knitted stitches tight and even, and this is how you do it. The first things you can do are keep the stitches on the lower half of your arm. Don't go up to your elbow. If you can, keep them near your wrist. This will make them tighter. Keep your hands close together when you're knitting, not very far apart. That'll pull the stitches, make them uneven. So keep them close together, not far apart. Keep them down to the bottom of your wrist or near your wrist as you can. And after you knit the stitch, you can snug it up with the loose yarn at the back. Give it a really good tug, and then you'll tighten up that stitch. But you don't want it too tight on your arms. If you have stitches of death on your arms, it'll be difficult to take them off or knit the next section. So just snug them up nicely. Let me take these off my arm now, and I'll just show you the stitches I've just done are very tight near the top. See how tight that is compared to the rest of them? So I've really snugged up those stitches, and you can make them very tight and smaller, even like, almost knitting with giant knitting needles. So where can you buy this gorgeous stuff? Well, Sheer Ethics on Etsy, sells in Australia, and they also have a branch in the USA, and they have a very also reasonable price. If you're in the UK or Europe, worldofwool.com has excellent prices, and they are actually a woolen mill that's owned by a family, and they have hundreds of varieties of wool. Let's do a quick recap of what we've learned so far. So you've learned how to prevent your wool roving blankets from shedding, and that is to felt them up very well. After that, they can be washed on a 15-minute quick wash, not longer, and then fluffed. Fluffing is very important. They dry faster when they're fluffed. The outside of the blanket is felted, it won't shed, and it makes them nice and bouncy. You also learned tricks to choosing the best roving. It should be 30 microns or less, so it's soft, unless you want a coarser blanket. And it should also be able to felt up well. So we saw how to do that. One trick you must know about arm knitting with thin yarn, and that was to chain the entire amount of yarn that you want to be working with. And that makes about 3 strands at a time once it's done being chained, and it's easier to work with. How to keep your stitches nice and tight and even, and that was to keep your hands close together. Also keep the stitches near your wrist if you can, and after you've knitted each stitch, snug it up after you've knitted it, and that will make your stitches significantly tighter. So are you guys happy with what you've learned? I hope this has been really helpful, and you've learned some new stuff that you can put into practice and really make these blankets gorgeous, and also help stop all the misinformation out there that they can't be washed and they will shed like mad all the time no matter what you do. You can do things to prevent it. So moving on, I also have a great offer for you. But first, the free stuff. Just for showing up, I'm giving all of you a tutorial for the top trending arm knitting blanket, exactly like the ones in these pictures. You can find this tutorial if you go to my website, trulymajestic.com, and then go to the shop at the top right-hand corner. Click on it, scroll down to Giant Yarn, or actually go to Giant Yarn, and then at the very bottom of that Giant Yarn page, you'll see this tutorial I've added just for you. And it also mentions on this page the places that I get my wool from, and I've also enabled the share buttons at the bottom so you can pin it wherever you like. In case I decide to remove the page, you'll still have access to it if you've saved it somewhere. So you can find more of my arm knitting tutorials also on my YouTube channel, Truly Majestic. Be sure to look for the little sheep logo when you're searching for Truly Majestic so you can find it. And also I have an arm knitting and crocheting Facebook group, and that's what it's called, Arm Knitting and Crocheting. And if you search on Facebook, you should be able to find that. Ask to join and I'll add you. Now let's get on to the offers. My husband and I have put together the basic framework for a master arm knitting course, and this would teach you how to create your own arm knitting designs. If you sat down to a meal and saw a gorgeous corn cob and you just thought, oh my goodness, I want to knit that, this course would help you, give you the tools to be able to put that together. Now, having said this, no matter what you knit, it will take some trial and error, but at least you'll have the guidelines to create what you need to create. And in that course, we've put together the framework of these 9 things. We'd like to cover wool roving and all about that. You learned a lot of that today. Arm knitting basics, decorative patterns, because some really work well and some absolutely don't work. How to shape your knits, reading charts, specialty stitches, color work, arm crocheting, and also how to use up your scraps and wet felt them into different designs. So we'd like to cover all of those things. And originally we wanted to have a price tag of $1,000. Now I'm sure some of you are just shocked. And we actually put that course to our free Facebook arm knitting and crocheting group and got their feedback on it. Most of them said the price is too painful. And they also gave us tons of other ideas about what they would like to see, but the price was too painful. And we know that the price of wool is painful, so we really wanted to make it available to more people. So we decided to, what if we took that, split it in half? So $500. Now, we still thought that's too much because we know lots of you can afford $500, but lots of you can't afford $500. So we thought we would make this into a membership, and that would break it down even further. So that way those who can pay for a 1-year membership can, month by month you can pay, and those who only want like 1 or 2 months, just learn everything that they want to know and then cancel because you can't afford it, could do that. So if we divided $500 into a monthly membership, it would be about $41. But we thought even $41 is pretty steep for a membership, so we can do even better than that still. So we know some of you don't want to learn how to create knits from scratch. You just want the arm knitting tutorial of the picture you see in front of you and just make that. So we wanted to divide up the membership into 2 different groups. One membership is going to be arm knitting tutorials only, just arm knitting tutorials. And that would be a rock bottom price of $17 only. And that's $17 a month. And by the way, you can cancel at any time. Although the membership runs for a year, you can cancel anytime you like. And also the next membership would be arm knitting tutorials and the course. And the course has not been made yet, and we're going to be making monthly webinars around what you guys want to learn. So you will be the founders. You will help us shape the course. You will help give us suggestions of what tutorials you would like. And these webinars will only run in the arm knitting tutorials and course. The one with just the tutorials, you'll still be able to suggest what tutorials you would like to have, but you won't have the live webinars and ideas of how to actually make these knits from scratch. Now for both groups, there are already 7 tutorials waiting in the membership area. This goes for both groups. And also for both groups, new tutorials will be added on a monthly basis. And I have on my schedule to add the carrot blanket, the corn cob, and the arm knitted cowl, the 3-in-1 cowl. So those will be coming in the next few months. And obviously in the course one, we'll actually have live webinars also of what you want to learn. An extra added perk of both groups is that you can pin to my Wool Ideas Pinterest board, and I have all sorts of things pinned here. I have things that I want to do, things that have just inspired me because they're so colorful and pretty, and that means like you'll see starfish sometime, and other times you'll just see felted gloves, and sometimes you'll see things completely not related to anything because the colors or the shape or something has inspired me. And you can pin to this board, and that just gives me an idea of what kind of things you would like to make, as well as giving me your direct feedback in the membership groups. Another bonus is this. I have a wholesale wool account with World of Wool, and that means I get roughly a 25% discount on all the wool I buy, and I'm going to pass that on to you. If you want me to buy your wool for you and ship it directly to you, I'll do that. But I get about a 25% discount. That's after sales tax and all that stuff is added. And shipping is the same for wholesale accounts and for retail accounts purchases. It doesn't matter. So you can find out how much you would save by going to World of Wool, put 10 kilos of wool in your cart, and then check the price, take 25% off that price, and that is how much of a price, I would be able to ship it to you. And this is a bonus just for the people that are in either the Arm Knitting Tutorials membership or the course membership areas. So let me just recap quickly. The tutorials only is $17 a month for a membership, and the tutorials and course together are $25 a month. And actually the course ones have a limited number of seats because we didn't want that to be overwhelmingly huge, so we actually did limit the numbers. If you get into either one of these at this rock bottom price and the price goes up, sometime within the next year, you will not have to pay the price that's marked up. As long as you're a member and you've started now, you will always pay that rock bottom price, unless you decide to cancel it and then you want to join again a year later, and then obviously the price will be up. So here's how to join. Head over to Patreon/Truly Majestic, and that is where we are doing the money side of things. You'll see the rewards down the right side of the screen, so you just need to scroll down until you see the memberships that you want, the Arm Knitting Tutorials or the one with the course. Once you confirm, click on the one that you want, confirm that's what you want, again on the next screen, and it'll ask you to join Patreon if you're not already joined. And this is very easy, it just needs your name and email. There are a few, actually after you join, you'll actually see how much it's asking you to pay, and there are some fees that are added on top of the monthly price. As you can see from my screenshot, this is like as if I was to support myself. You can see there's VAT has been added, which is sales tax for the UK, and some card fees. So depending on what country you're buying this from, the fees might be different. I can't tell you exactly how much it would be, but I just wanted to give you a heads up because I don't want you to be unpleasantly surprised and just think, well, you said 17, but now it's like 21 or something. It will be a bit more, and I don't know how much. It depends on your country. So, again, it runs for 1 year. You can cancel at any time, and I will be contacting each of you and adding you manually to the group that you've chosen to be in. Thank you for joining me. If you have any questions, email me, pop them into the comments below with the Facebook comments thing, and I'll see you next time.